What was I threatening to do before?
You were threatening to like jump on the bed into the shot. You were like over there and you're like, ah!
No.
Okay.
Christoffer friends, welcome back to Opus Elenae, where we reduce, reuse, and recycle. A long time ago, in a galaxy far, far away, wait, no, about 12 years ago, like a couple miles away, I dragged my cousin to her first and only SCA event. She used to go to the run fair with me and take pictures there every year, but never got further involved than that. So when she told me she wanted to check out this whole SCA thing, I was like, you have to dress up, right? Despite adamantly never ever dressing up before, she was still game, so I made her a dress. It was a sort of quick and dirty bliaut from the late 12th century. She came to the event, had a good time, or so she said, and promptly never came to another one ever again. When life took her from Texas to Kentucky and then New York State, she found the dress again while packing and asked me if I had any use for it, since she didn't. And of course, I said yes, and I've been thinking about what I wanted to do with it. I could donate it to the local baronial closet for people who need to borrow garb, but the quick and dirty construction isn't up to my standards anymore. I could use it for linings, but the rectangular construction with inset gores makes each piece of fabric smaller than I'd want for linings. Or... I've been thinking recently that I have a heraldic sideless surcoat, I have a wool sideless surcoat, I have a cyclist, which is basically the precursor to a sideless surcoat, and I'm working on the sabriel surcoat. Yes, still. But I don't actually have a plain linen surcoat. I wanted something you'd see working women wear in the Luttrell Psalter, something I could wear on the daily at Gulf War to protect my coat hardies and jazz up the capsule wardrobe. Everyone go grab your cuppa. Today I am drinking Boggs Holler tea from Old Growth Alchemy. It is an earthy herbal tea created in collaboration with the Old Gods of Appalachia, one of my very favorite cosmic horror narrative podcasts. It has lemon balm and rosemary and elderflower, most of which are sourced locally in the Appalachian Mountains. Let's get into it. I made this bliaut with lacing strips down the sides to create the cinching effect, so first I'll remove the laces, then I'll cut the sleeves off, but I'll keep those since they'll come in handy later. I'm not exactly sure how the dress is going to fit, so the next step is to try it on inside out so I can pin and mark any alterations I'll need to make. The gores are so low, I'm not sure why I set them that far below the waist originally. In order to move them up closer to where they should be, between the waist and hips, I will have to take up the shoulders by several inches. After I have the shoulders where I want them, I'm going to roughly mark the shoulder width, side opening, and neckline in chalk. I want to do this while I still have it on, since gravity changes how the dress falls. I will mark the shoulder seams along the pins, front and back, and then I can take everything off. Once I have the dress back on the table, I can go back over the marks I made before, smoothing out the curves and making sure the shoulder seams and angles are correct. Then I will cut along those lines, folding the dress into halves and quarters depending on which line I'm cutting so that all of the openings are symmetrical. quick try on to make sure that the shoulders are the right height and everything is in the correct place. Cutting the gates or enlarged armhole of the surcoat can make the sides of the dress droop, so I want to make sure that's not happening either. I'm good to go, so I can sew the shoulder seams and get ready for the next step. You may have noticed from the fact that my camera is fighting for its life to pick up the color, that this dress is currently a distressingly bright red that looks horrid on me, so the next thing to do is to dye it darker. I'm taking my dye setup outside, both because my kitchen is an entire mess, and also because I can bring my laptop out here to keep a close eye on the dye pot. Don't pay any attention to the fact that it started out on one side of the porch and then jumped to the other. I was halfway through the process when I remembered that I was an art major and that backlighting is bad. Into a hot dye pot goes burgundy dye, a bunch of salts, a good stir, and the pre-rinsed surcoat, including the cut-off sleeves, since I'll be using those later. I wasn't thinking at all about finishing the cut edges of the fabric because I figured the dye process would be fairly gentle, and it was, but the rinsing wasn't. Don't be like me, finish your edges. After a good long while of about 85% working, 10% checking my phone, and 5% diligently stirring the forbidden soup, I can take the dress back into the house and rinse it a few times in the washing machine. Once everything is rinsed and dyed, I can serge the seams that I forgot to before dyeing. And then move on to cutting one of the sleeves into a rectangle to create bias tape that I will then use to face all of the openings in the surcoat. After I mark all of my equidistant lines on a 45-degree angle, I will sew the rectangle of fabric into a tube offset by one set of lines. Then I can go over where the lines meet on that seam just to make sure I can see them clearly all the way around when it comes time to cut the bias spiral apart. Thank you to all of my current and continuing Ko-fi members. Your support and the support of all of my members and croissants makes it easier to do what I do and provide quality content for everyone. Thank you all so much. Stick around after this brief commercial break to see me finish up the dress. I'm not even going to bother folding and ironing the bias tape before I attach it to the dress. I'll pin it to the openings right sides together, trying to use the longest continuous sections of tape to minimize seams. Once everything is pinned, I'll sew it together all at once. I dropped so many pins in this process. Next up is ironing. This will be a 3-stage process. First, I'll iron everything flat, pressing the seam allowances toward the dress away from the bias tape. Second, which I totally forgot to film, I'll fold the seam allowances on the bias tape in and press those. Third, I will turn the bias tape to the inside of the dress and press that nice and flat, concentrating on making sure the tape lays smoothly around the curves. This takes a lot of steam, a lot of patience, and letting the fabric cool between rounds of pressing. The last step is to sew the bias tape down with a tiny felling stitch. It's relaxing, mindless work for me, so like a sickly Victorian child, I'm taking to my bed and watching a couple episodes of Ye Olde Babylon 5 while I sew. On the whole, this project was a win, despite the uneven dye take-up, which honestly is really only noticeable when the surcoat is wet. The red is exactly the color I was going for and will look good with all of the different dresses I could pair it with. And because it's not super fancy or well made, I won't end up being precious about it getting dirty or worn. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to like and subscribe, and consider sharing it to your favorite social media platform. Speaking of social media, I am at Opus Elenae everywhere, but the place you can most reliably find me is my Discord. If you're interested in sewing, history, or just a wonderfully supportive community, come and join us at the link in the description. Until next time, be kind, do the work, continue supporting marginalized people, and keep creating. Quill.